Hello, I'm Richard Long, Executive Director of the Learning First Alliance. The Learning First Alliance is a partnership of leading education organizations representing more than 10 million members dedicated to improving student learning in America's public schools. We share examples of success, encourage collaboration at every level, and work towards the continual and long-term improvement of public education based on solid research. This week, we are celebrating Public Schools Week. The LFA is striving to create safe, equitable, and engaging public schools to help overcome the significant upheaval and trauma brought about by the last 2 years. We want to show the strength and potential of our nation's public schools and our students' futures. Today, we are being joined by a group of experts on how to achieve public school mental health and well-being. And on our panel today, we have a group that represents both the best of research, the best of practice, and what is going on in our schools. To help us today to go through this, let me just introduce our panel and then pass it off to David Osher, who will be expanding the discussion through a set of framing questions that he's put together. If any of you, by the way, as you're answering questions, want to expand upon your bios, please do so. We have your full bios on our webpage, which is www.publicschoolproud.org. Alma Lopez is the School Counselor Association 2022 School Counselor of the Year. Alma has been a school counselor for 15 years and currently serves in the lead school counselor at Livingston Middle School in California and Livingston Unified School District as their school coordinating counselor. Dr. April Turner is the National Association of School Psychologists 2022 School Psychologist of the Year. Dr. Turner currently serves as the School Psychologist Services Supervisor at the Maryland State Department of Education. And prior to that, she worked as a school psychologist in an urban public school for well over 9 years. Chris Seeley, who has a master's degree in social work, is Program Director of School and Social Initiatives at the American Psychiatric Association Foundation. Prior to working at the foundation, Seeley served as direct therapy intern at Michigan State University's Counseling Center. He was also the assistant community director supervising and coaching residents at Michigan State and facilitated skill building groups for at-risk youth at the Star Commonwealth Detroit. He's also been delivering individual and family counseling. Pamela Cantor is a physician, author, and thought leader on human potential, the science of learning and development, and educational equity. Dr. Cantor practiced child and adolescent psychiatry for nearly 2 decades, specializing in trauma. She's founded the Turnaround for Children in 2002 after co-authoring a major study that assessed the impact of the 9/11 attacks on children in the New York City schools. She's also been a major presenter for many of the LFA-related organizations, and as such has been guiding our thinking on mental health and well-being in some very significant ways. But to help us frame this discussion, it's my pleasure to introduce to you someone who's become my friend, Dr. David Osher. He's Vice President and Institute Fellow at the American Institutes of Research, AIR. Osher's work focuses on school climate and conditions of learning, social and emotional learning, and supportive. Actually, David, this doesn't do you justice at all. You have brought us together in so many different ways in these pieces and teaching us how the interdependence of these ideas are what make the difference. David, thank you for your contributions both to the science of learning and to how it is practiced. And David, I'm looking forward to how you take us forward today.
Okay, Rich, thank you so much. And thank you for the generous introduction. And I do not know well some of the panelists, and I do know better one of the panelists, but I can tell you that this is a rich and wonderful panel that really can continue the arc of the last few days in terms of grounding ourselves. And while we know that we are in this moment of great exigency that is experienced by everybody in the school community, and it's part of an arc coming from COVID and social disruption that has been a disrupting arc, I want to start by reminding us that what we're about is really thriving. And at the same time, we need to enable people to survive in order to thrive. And thriving, as my colleagues and I have been defining it, is the ability both in the moment and over time to be able to experience well-being as a floor, and then groundedness and an experience of agency, both individually and collectively, in each one of your life domains. And one of those life domains is school, but its impact is not just on school, it is in the short run and long run on the other life domains as well. In each of those domains, ultimately, but particularly school, those themes that Rich called out, that have been the themes of the week, are incredibly important. No matter where you work, and teachers' work and students' work is in schools, you need to be safe. You need to be physically safe, emotionally safe, safe in your identity, intellectually safe. You need to feel connected and supported, and that you can belong, and that you do belong. You need to be challenged to be your best, but know that there are supports there to enable you to realize being your best. And this all has to take place in a way that is equitable for you and everybody else. In this moment, in many schools that I hear, it's almost like people are on the Titanic and they feel that it is sinking and they're looking for the lifeboats. And I want to start for that metaphor. A, that's not the case. The boat isn't sinking. But two, even if people are experiencing it and need life boats, you want people to get into those boats so that they get home and meet their journey. And that involves they're going in a way that makes sense, that's sensible. And it also means that they're going in with a sense of well-being and an ability to go there. And I know that sounds odd, but even in those moments, people who survive have a sense of agency in that moment. And in our work in school, I think in our conversations today, we have to be thinking about both how in the moment when we really have to enable people and school communities, which are different in all different places, to be able to meet these immediate needs, can we embody the good principles that we're talking about, while at the same time, we're moving both for individuals and our environments in a way that can be transformative, because we know what existed before COVID for most of our kids and many of our schools wasn't working. And I think you have a panel here who can really enable us to do things. And what I'm going to do is I'll do a little framing before each big question. And we're going to start with the panel. And the first order we'll do for this first one is actually as people have been introduced. And so we're going to start with Alma, who brings us her experience from rural America and these issues. And then we'll go to April, and then Chris, and then Pam will end us up. And it's nice because she's also been all over the country. So, Alma.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David and Rich, for that wonderful introduction. I am super excited to be here this morning to be able to have a conversation with everyone on this very important topic. As you know, our U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Murthy, released a advisory about protecting our youth's mental health recently. And as the school counselor of the year, I had an opportunity to actually engage in a conversation with him and with our Department of Education Secretary Cardona just a few weeks ago. And what we know is happening, so do our leaders. And so that is a great place for us to start this conversation, is to know that, yes, there are issues that are impacting our young people. These issues were in place prior to the pandemic, and they continue. Some of those issues are related to sadness and hopelessness. And of course, as our students have endured the loss, the death of many of their loved ones, and many of their peers in classrooms and parents and communities, that is definitely something that the pandemic has enhanced. We also know that our young people have issues related to their self-worth. And some of those challenges that our students and even ourselves as adults have to do with what's out on media and in the pop culture. And so we know that being home for the past 2 years for many of our young people, they were on media and they were looking at pop culture in a very big way. And so those issues are definitely enhanced at this moment in time. The technology platforms, again, a good thing that we were doing and being able to teach our students about, yet it also allowed for things like cyberbullying and additional exclusion to occur. So the pandemic has significantly impacted our young people, our families, and our communities. And what we need is to spend some time acknowledging that mental health is health. And I believe that Dr. Murthy, in his advisory, talks about that to us in a very direct way. When we see physical ailments in a person, we're quick to address those issues and provide the treatment. But with mental health, it has been a little more stigmatized until recent. Now we have people in leadership positions that are calling this, putting the advisory out there and saying these things are happening and we can do something about it by acknowledging that mental health is indeed health and that it's a part of mental wellness for everyone. So our students, of course, in the building, but also their teachers, the administrators, the bus drivers, the cafeteria, we all are deserving of mental wellness. And it's important for us to understand that mental health is treatable and very often it is preventable. What we need is our students need us to truly act in their best interest, to create opportunities that demonstrate what they're learning in creative ways. Maybe it doesn't have to be an essay. Maybe it could be a virtual presentation like we're doing for you today. We can be flexible with our deadlines. Do things really have to be turned in on Friday, or can we extend some grace in our young people's lives and allow deadlines to be a little bit postponed or delayed? And we need to acknowledge our students and the situations that they're in and grant them that grace. We need to care about our students and we need to intentionally show that we care with our words and also with our actions. Our families need us to partner with them more than ever before. They are truly the experts in the lives of their children. And so we need to connect with them and partner with them and invite them to the table, whether it's a virtual table or it's an in-person table as we have, moving forward. And third, our communities. Our communities really need for us to be active listeners to what is needed in each of our individual communities. As David mentioned, I'm in a rural community, and so the needs of my community may be indeed very different from other communities throughout the nation. And so coming together as a group of people who are interested in the mental wellness of all is essential. And we have a very unique opportunity to contribute, to be part of that village that makes a difference in the lives of our young people.
Okay, April.
Thank you so much for this invitation to be on the panel. I'm excited to be here and represent school psychologists across the country. I am going to amplify and echo a lot of what Ms. Lopez said in reference to the needs that we have related to mental health across the country, some that have been amplified due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and really needing to understand that we are looking out for the mental health of everyone that interacts with the schools, from teachers to custodians to bus drivers to counselors. Everyone in that environment impacts the outcomes of students because these are the people that they're interacting with. And I would also kind of add to that is we really need to be looking at this work through an equity lens. What are we doing to be sure that all of our students that we interact with are getting exactly what it is that they need? And how might we need to be strategic, as Ms. Lopez mentioned, in a rural area, which may have different kind of needs and different resources as compared to maybe on the East Coast or in a highly urban environment. And so when I think about that work, again, I amplify what Ms. Lopez said and also add on the part of the equity lens and really thinking about what is it that our students need, what kind of talents and amazingness they bring to the table, and how can we continue to strengthen that and have them to continue to be resilient.
Okay, Chris.
Yes, I just want to extend, the thank you to Learning First Alliance and Dr. Osher for moderating this such crucial and timely conversation, and echoing and kudos, and I think amplifying everything that was said before, and just I think emphasizing just the high stress and everything that's happening to students is happening to staff. If you are in a school community, the staff is experiencing unprecedented levels of stress right now. People might be calling it the great resignation, but I believe it might be the great realization in a lot of ways. And I think, how schools start to think about how they are supporting staff is just as important as students. And I really just want to emphasize that I think every child in the school community needs an adult community member outside of their family that cares about them, believes in them, and can be there for them. That healthy relationship with an adult community member can be such a great protective factor. And that person doesn't have to have all the answers. They can really be the bridge or the connector to the individuals like Alma or Dr. Turner or Dr. Cantor, to really be that connector and be that listening ear for when they do run into all of these different experiences that we're going to be talking about today. So I just want to emphasize that those adult members in the community that can invest in children's relationships, they're so needed now more than ever.
If there's anyone who can be bat cleanup after this wonderful filling of the bases, it's Pam Cantor, given the issues you've raised. So, Pamela?
Yeah, well, there's so many important things that this group has already elevated. One of the things I wanted to emphasize is this idea that wellness and illness actually exist in an arc. There's not a well state and an ill state. It's not black or white. And one of the things that can move us as human beings, whether we're kids or adults, from wellness to illness is unremitting stress. Our bodies and our minds will wear out from stress. If it was an elbow or a knee because of sports, we'd understand it. As Dr. Turner was saying, we wouldn't stigmatize it, as Dr. Lopez was saying. We would just fix it. We would just say, we gotta fix this part. But it's not what we do about our emotions. And we know that among the things, one of the most powerful things that can address stress and a host of other things are the things that Chris just talked about, which is the presence of a trustful, caring relationship in a young person's life. Relationships are biologically mediated. They're mediated by a hormone oxytocin, and the hormone oxytocin has very, very powerful effects on the brain, including stress reduction and prevention of mental illness. But oxytocin is also an incredible hormone for learning. So when we get to talk about learning environments and the kinds of things we need to do, let's remember that relationships have multiple positive effects in kids' lives.
This is a wonderful grounding for the remaining questions. And we may want to come back to these themes later on, depending on how we go. That there are different words that have been thrown around a lot during the last decade. One is social emotional learning. I want to give us not that word, but really the ability of people to develop and master, adults and young people, the social and emotional dispositions and skills that they need to help each other and be effective in life and do it in a culturally responsive way. Mental health that Alma started to define for us, and all of you are experts on that. Now I'm talking to my fellow panelists, and well-being that already we've talked about. And so I would like you to think about what are the relationships of these three components if we were temporarily to tease them apart, because I want to be clear that what we know is there's an inextricable link between these, in the same way that there's an inextricable link between social and emotional and cognitive domains. But let's, as you talk, you can choose to separate them, but then to try to show how do you see in your work the connections between them and the issues that are so central that April brought up. How does equity play out in terms of these issues? Okay, and why don't we now reverse the order? And so Pamela, you didn't know you were going first, but Pam's going to go first, and Chris is going to go second, and April is going to go third, and Alma last. Okay, so Pam.
Well, the subjects that we've been talking about so far are different dimensions of a young person's life. What do kids have to do to be successful in their lives? I mean, what are their activities? What's their job? And their job is learning. Their job is competency and skill development. And the nature of the way their brains are organized, there is not a social part of the brain, an emotional part of the brain, a cognitive part of the brain. All of these parts of the brain are cross-wired, and they are functionally interdependent. So the kinds of skills that we want kids to have, what we call the building block skills, the 21st century skills, you say, how are those related to equity? Well, a child who knows how to collaborate as part of a team, a child who knows how to analyze a problem, a child who knows how to collaborate with others, these are young people that are prepared for life. And those kinds of skills, 21st century skills, every single one of them is malleable to the experiences that kids have. So the big opportunity that we have here is that we can be designers of an environmental context, a relational context, experiences that intentionally develop the skills that all kids need. That's a path to equity. But we do not do that. Okay, we don't do it in our schools, and we don't do it outside of our schools. This is not about repairing kids. This is about preparing kids with the skills and competencies that they need. And that, to me, is what equity is all about.
Chris?
Yeah, Dr. Cantor, I believe, that opportunity, especially in the social emotional learning curriculum in K through 12 education, is exactly what, we have this opportunity, right, to create a more caring, empathetic, and responsive community as a whole. If we really take the time to think about the development from K through 12 and then beyond, and really ensuring that our next generation has not just strong academic skills or athletic skills or whatever intelligence that they might have, but that strong emotional intelligence to be, the next best director of a program, or to, run for president and really think about the social impacts of the programming that gets implemented. If we don't think that's a wise investment, I would just implore anyone to go and look at a current job description and look at the soft skills of empathy and collaboration being on a job description. And then I think that the state of equity as well, when I'm thinking about that, I think about the fact that students with disabilities represent 12% of the student population, but 28% of the students who are referred or arrested by law enforcement. And then 70% of those students are Black or Latinx, and how really disruptive behaviors in the classroom have really been punished. We remove students from the classroom when they're disruptive, instead of seeing that behavior as an opportunity for connection to support services. You might not know what's going on. There's a root cause to that behavior, and let's get it to the experts to figure out what that root cause is. And I think we are lacking in our ability to do that right now, but I think now is the time to have these very difficult conversations when we think about discipline referrals, when we think about truancy rates, when we think about how we are connecting students to care and who gets connected to care. I think those are all very important questions that all school communities should be looking at. And there's data to look at within your schools, and happy to support any school who's looking to address some of those things as well. But I think social emotional learning curriculum, very, very important for the next generation. And there's a lot of work to be done in the equity side.
Yeah. Before April and Alma come in, let me just do a framing further for them. And I very much agree with what we've heard before. And I want to add two things. One, by now we have good, solid empirical data. I'm one of the people, but of many people who have done it, that really show the disastrous implications of suspension on children. Both in the short run and the long run, both in terms of worse behavior rather than better behavior, as well as in terms of academic performance effects and so forth. What we also know is what is going on is never just within the child. It's also within the environment. It's always transactional. And, one of the things that is really good in schools that are working well is when there is collaborative teaming that is going on in the process. And people like school counselors, if they are there, people like school psychologists are there, play critical roles. And it's both for the young people, but as Chris had said earlier, it's also for the adults, because this is about all of us. And so April 1st, and then Alma.
Thank you so much for that kind of additional framing. When I am reflective about this type of work, and especially as it relates to these intersecting kind of terms, you talked about well-being, you talked about SEL, you talked about mental health, and I really see them all interacting together. And at their core, it's really about teaching skills about how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And so if we think about them in those three kind of buckets, and we target skills about how you can reframe your thinking, how you can reframe some of your actions, how you can develop coping skills to manage some of your emotions, those three things are continuous across multiple programs. Whether we're talking about an SEL-based program, whether we're talking about some psychoeducational lessons, whether we're talking about in-person kind of ongoing coaching, if we're really targeting those skills, I think we set students up to be successful in whatever they choose as the next step. I remember Chris mentioned the job market. So a lot of times when we have our students that are struggling, they are struggling because sometimes they don't have those intangible social emotional skills. They aren't able to collaborate effectively. They aren't able to give feedback effectively. A lot of times when they're in a situation, there was maybe a manager that gave some feedback. are our students able to receive that feedback and then use that to change their behavior? And so when I think about all three of them, it's really about targeting how students think, how they feel, and how they act, and how we really target those skills and amplify it so that students can be successful in whatever they choose post kind of our education system from K-12.
Alma? Oh, and then Pam, I will come to you right after that. So Alma and then Pam.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I agree 100% with everyone on this call, right? And probably with most of our viewers that social emotional learning, mental health, and mental well-being is indeed something that everyone's talking about. So we all know that this is a very important conversation. And I really appreciate what April just mentioned about, and I wrote it down, the thinking, the feeling, and the actions right behind that. And so the great news is that as school counselors, as school social workers, as school psychologists, as school nurses, we are familiar and we are trained in these areas to intentionally support our students in learning new attitudes, new skills, and new knowledge in these three spaces of what is and how does our thinking and how does our feeling impact those actions that we take as we move forward. And there are definitely a wide array of research-based, evidence-based programs that are out there that are helping support. And when we come together as a team, as a school system, to really engage our students and intentionally instruct them in this area of social emotional learning, we're really working towards creating these human beings that are ready to take on the world. And we see that happen, generation after generation. And currently here in my school, I'd like to highlight, we have, we're the Cougar Pride, and so home of the Cougars. And so we have a little acronym, and the P stands for being productive. The R is respectful and responsible. The I is individual, so important. Determined to excel. So we use that intentionally with our students, from the principal morning announcement to teachers intentionally instructing. What does it look like to be productive in the classroom? What does it look like to be productive in the cafeteria? What does it look like to be productive in a friendship, right? And being able to build those relationships with one another, both our peers and the adults around us. And so I agree that social emotional learning, mental health, and mental wellness are all interdependent on one another. The bottom line is that we want to see young people become good, positive, contributing members of society. And so we, as the people in the school buildings that can notice when something isn't quite right with our student or even with an adult in the building, we can have conversations, we can provide information, and maybe it can stay within the school building, or maybe we recognize that we need to include other professionals outside of the building, maybe a physician, maybe a psychologist, maybe a psychiatrist. And so we can help our students get connected to those additional resources. But I will say again that I am very excited that this conversation is happening at levels outside of the school building, because those of us in the day-to-day practice, we know that our students definitely need some intentional instruction and support in these areas to help them become those adults that are thriving. As Dr. Cantor mentioned earlier, we want to see those young people thriving.
And Dr. Cantor.
Okay. One of the stories that I remember from my practice was how you move a child from why me, why do I have these problems, and why am I always getting into trouble, to actually believing that their struggles were going to be a source of superpowers. And what I with young children, I used to call them magic muscles. And And, you know, they would think that I was just kind of being sappy or overly optimistic. But over 20 years of being in practice, I watched young people struggle, and they did develop superpowers, powers of perception, powers of empathy, cognitive muscles. You know, one of my favorite education scholars who talks about this is a scholar by the name of Zaretta Hammond. And she always talks about this, the movie, you might remember, The Karate Kid, and Mr. Miyagi and Daniel. And she talks about this because one of the roles we have when kids are struggling is actually not to coddle them, it's to push them, support them, but push them so that they actually see the strengths that they have at a moment of struggle. So when I was listening to you, April, and I was listening to those 3 buckets of skills and thinking of what kind of young person would grow out of developing those kinds of skills, it would be somebody with superpowers.
What a wonderful way to end what is really the first part of this series of questions. And so far, we've been talking about principles and helping make sense of them. In the next question, I'm going to ask each of you to talk about a tool that you know of that could be helpful, because people both want to understand and also want to act. And I want to say to everyone who's listening that tools, if they're within one domain, have to be understood in the way that you've heard before from everyone on the panel and Rich, which is what is happening is interdependent in people and in the environments. And so there is a great tool, but it's not the only solution. It is something that can contribute to a solution, and it's best when it is connectable to other tools. And so let's now change the order again. And so we're going to go to Chris, and then we will go to Alma, and then we'll go to Pam, and then we'll go to April.
Well, thank you. And I guess I'm going to cheat a little bit and give you 2 tools, because the first one is patience. I think that is such a crucial tool when we're thinking about mental health, working with youth, working with adults in general, is patience, especially right now more than anything. So patience is the first tool that I'm going to say that I've seen work. You know, take your time and understanding the situation. Next, I think there are a lot of different options out there when we think about mental health professional development for your staff to better understand kind of these early warning signs of mental health and other distress. And the foundation does have that. We call it Notice, Talk, Act at School. And it's really about all of the things that we've been talking about today. It's about building a relationship with students. It's about recognizing these disruptive and withdrawn behaviors as signs and symptoms for early warning signs, how to engage in these difficult conversations up to a point so that we can act to connect students to the support services that they need, to Elma, to Dr. Turner, to Dr. Cantor, to those school social workers that are out there. And that's really about shared language and shared framework across the community, and really lifting, I think, the role and responsibility of trying to diagnose or trying to understand the treatment plan for this child that you care about, and really saying your role is to notice when things are changing for them, to engage in a meaningful conversation, and then to act when appropriate to connect them to the services when they need them. And I would love to talk all day about the program. I love it. I'm very, very attached to the program, but it's really about everything that we're talking about here today. And we are addressing school to prison pipeline. We're looking at discipline referrals. We've shown an 89% reduction in discipline referrals, 70% reduction in truancy rates, 99% reduction in suicide attempts within the schools, and 171% increase in support services, which is really the key there. We're shifting those discipline referrals to those support services, which is really one of the keys as a social worker myself. So patience and Notice, Talk, Act at School.
Okay. Pam? Oh, excuse me, Alma.
Sure. No, thank you. And thank you for that, Chris. I'm gonna take your lead and I'm gonna share two as well. And the first, going along with Chris, is intentionality. The more that we can be intentional about our work, the bigger difference, the bigger impact that work will make. You know, there are some things that are good for everyone, right? And that's okay to do. But then we need to take a step and take a moment to look at what the data tells us some of our students may need a little more of, and we need to go ahead and get them that little bit more, right? That's the equity piece that fits in here. So definitely being intentional about our work is one of those things that we want to have in our toolkit. We want to know that it matters, and we want to make sure that we are intentional about the work that we do. And with that, the second tool I would say is the school-based mental health professionals. I am one of those. As a school counselor, I definitely believe in the power of implementing a comprehensive school counseling program that is accessible to all students in the building. And the reason I believe in it is because when we can look at our support system and say, here's what everybody gets. Everybody deserves social emotional learning curriculum, right? We know this. And now the bigger world is knowing this and helping us fund those programs and provide that. Here in my district, we use a curriculum that's called the Second Step Social Emotional Learning Curriculum. And previous years, our school counseling team would lead about 7 counseling instruction lessons on topics related to collaboration, working in groups, empathy building, problem solving, conflict resolution, all of these skills that are so essential. Well, as we return to the building from the pandemic, and we're still in the pandemic, it became crucial for us to say, okay, we have this research-based program, curriculum, how do we do more of this? And so we worked right alongside our teachers who see our students every day for 180 days to be an active part of rolling out this curriculum. So here in our middle school, our history department teachers actually instruct all 30 lessons on one day a week. So here it's on Mondays during their class. They have prioritized and helped us ensure that all of our students are accessing this very important information on a weekly basis. And then we provided the curriculum to all of our teachers so that they know, hey, this is what's happening in history this week, and they can further enhance those lessons. Maybe the language arts department in a class that they are or a book that they're reading in class, they can highlight some of those skills that they're learning in the characters in a book that they're reading about, or other subjects can do similar, right? Using the same vocabulary. I think Chris mentioned that is so important. And so for us, intentionally rolling out a research-based curriculum on social emotional learning has really been a game changer, because I'll tell you, we have students that come in and they know the words to be able to express themselves. And that's what we've been asking for, right? We want kids to come in and ask for help when they need it. And so when students can come in and say, hey, Miss Alma, I'm feeling really stressed out today. What can I do about it, right? Hey, they're able to identify what they're feeling. Now I, as a school counselor, have some information as to how I can best support them. And I can use that same curriculum that is being taught in the classroom, that same information, and go a little deeper with my students to have a conversation to provide them some of those skills and or knowledge about how they can improve or work on their own mental wellness. And one other small story that I'll tell you is we've been using this curriculum for a little bit.
No, Alma, we can't. I'm sorry, because we have other questions. Thank you. Pam, please, and then April.
I think that one of the things that I wanted to share is a piece of work that grows out of a movement at this point that I work on with David and others like Linda Darling-Hammond, called the Science of Learning and Development Initiative or Alliance. And although the first part of that work had to do with answering the question, what science should we pay attention to in thinking about how to design learning environments of different kinds, where it landed is what I would call a mega tool that I would like you to know about, and that is the essential guiding principles for whole child design. That piece of work is a playbook now. It's free. It's available certainly on Turnaround for Children's website, also the Learning Policy Institute. But what's important is that it is a roadmap that elevates where whole child design and the principles of whole child design are being implemented today. What's meant by whole child design are positive developmental relationships, a culture of safety and belonging, rich instructional experiences, 21st century skills and mindsets, and integrated supports. The whole point of this project was to say, what would we want all learning environments to be designed to do? And how could they encompass social and emotional learning, cognitive development, academic rigor? So I hope you'll take a look at the essential guiding principles for whole child design.
It is very, very good. And I pass it on to April.
Sure. I think what I want to do is amplify what the other three presenters have talked about, but more so think about what kind of things you need to be looking for in whatever tool you have access to. Because I think when we think about equity and access to programming, it varies from district to district, and sometimes within a school, from one school to another school. So I think regardless of what type of tool you're using, you want to make sure that it is looking at a multi-tiered approach. Ms. Lopez mentioned that you want to make sure that there's access, something that everybody is getting, something that select students are getting, and then something that targeted students are getting. So you're accessing that whole kind of tiers of support. Second, I would ask you to look at the CASEL framework. So CASEL has an amazing framework that talks about SEL and how it moves forward. It also has a nice equity lens to it to talk about how you can apply it across multiple environments. And my final two things that I want you to be thinking about is how are you filling staff and adult wellness when you're planning for this? Because the adults in the building cannot pour from an empty cup. They cannot pour into students if they are not affirmed themselves. And I'm going to kind of echo what Chris said when you started out, patience and grace. We are all living in a time that has really been unprecedented. We're all learning at the same time. So give yourself some patience and grace, and also give that to the students that you work with.
Thank you. I'm going to take the first 2 of my 5 minutes now to frame something, and I want to let the panelists know we can combine the last set of 2 questions, and you can pick one or the other, and think about also what is the major takeaway beyond what has been said that happens. And just to know the order here, Pam will go first, and then April second, Chris third, and Alma will close. And so you can think about which one you want. Let us know what you're doing. I want to go to Pam's superpower model for a second, and also say that, you know, a lot of people in education understand the fact that there's a zone of proximal development. Jargon word, but the difference between what you can realize without support and with support. I want to add, though, that that's for both adults as well as young people. It's both in the moment and over time, and it's not fixed. The more people are developing webs of support around each other, the more people are developing their own abilities, the more they can communicate with each other. We can know more about where people are at any moment and help them be further. And what you've heard, including just the wise guidance about being patient and being, intentional, and understanding, what in Pam and my work is the need of adults and young people to be able to attune to each other, as well as to their peers, is just so important. And so that's the beginning, I think, of what I would add to a summary. And now I want to pass it on to, in the order I gave, so that people can choose what they want to do. Just let us know what you're responding to, okay? So Pam?
I think, you know, there are words like robust equity or words like thriving. You say, well, what is that? How will we know that we have created the kinds of environments that can provide that to a child? So one of the things that has been most influential to me is recognizing the bidirectional nature of environment and child. That it isn't just what's provided. So we can't just do a checklist and say this environment has all of these things. And we can't do a checklist about the young person and say, well, this young person is bringing all of these things. I think if we think about our own life, growth happened in the space between. It happened in the relationship that we had to a person, to a place, to the things that happened. And if we were disappointed, who caught that? And if we succeeded, who celebrated that? That all the big, incredible stuff that made us who we are was in this relationship between us and environments that were capable of moving us. So we haven't figured out how to measure that yet. Right now, I think the state of play is this recognition of how powerful the opportunity is to shape the relational context of children's lives in multiple ways. And that's what my final word is. That's the commitment certainly I'm making in this chapter of my professional life. And it's where I think all the power lies.
Okay. Thank you, Pam. April? Oh, Chris. No, it is April, right? Yep.
I think this is definitely kind of a complex question. When I really reflect on what's next or what can we do to really build those relationships, I center on a couple different things. I center on having mental health providers in school buildings, school-based providers, whether that's a school psychologist, a school counselor, a school social work, and perhaps a community partner that is based in the school. What we know and what the research has told us is that students are 6 times more likely to get access to mental health supports in school environments. And so I think that is where our weight is and where we want to kind of push that forward. Specifically within the NASP, which is the National Association of School Psychologists, there is definitely a recommended ratio of 500 school psychologists, 500 students, to 1 school psychologist. And we are still moving towards that ratio, and it varies across the country. So I think the actual adults there, echoing what Chris said in the beginning, having that caring adult who can then provide some of that support for students. And I also think you want to identify what are the needs in your community? What are the needs in your building? Because it may vary from one building to another, and really thinking about what does our building need and how can we use our resources to get there. And my final kind of closing thought as it talks about mental health within schools, as we talk about student wellness and adult wellness, I really want us to think about equity and what that looks like. So thinking about equity, diversity, and inclusion. So thinking about equity, does everyone have access and access that matches their resources? And then is the environment that we're in diverse? Do we have diversity of thought? Do we have diversity of experience? Do we have diversity of experiences? And then the final one is inclusion. Once we have these diverse voices at the table, do they have power and decision-making power at the table? Are we including students when we're planning for mental health supports? Because similar to what Ms. Lopez said earlier, there may be an amazing program that they have at their school. I love the Pride example. but does that impact students? Are they working towards something students want? So we want to make sure that we're including them in the planning and to make sure they have power and they have voice in that, because at the end of the day, what we're planning for them needs to be something that they're bought into. So I think when I think about mental health in schools, when I think about well-being, those are really the three things that stand out for me.
Okay. Thank you. And Chris and Alma, you have about 1 minute each in this case here, because we have to do a closeout. So
perfect.
Go ahead.
Well, investment in support services, it's an investment in our future. And if we want the future that we all desire, to have more caring, empathetic, and compassionate adults in our lives, it takes an investment across the board. Empowerment, I love I think engagement in support services unlocks superpowers. And I just want to emphasize that again and again and again. We talk too much about the negative side of mental health and mental illness, and we don't focus enough on the positive side, on the once you come out of it. And then I want to implore every single school listening here to explore their zero tolerance policy. When we think about racial equity in schools, tolerance policies in the schools is a first place to start with that and start to really explore how that is expressed.
Alma?
All right. Well, I think that my panelists did an amazing job articulating that all very well. Of course, as a member of the American School Counseling Association, we also have a recommended ratio, 250 students per school counselor. And so I start there. I believe that every school throughout this nation is deserving of that support services investment, as Chris mentioned, in those mental health providers, from our school nurses to our school social workers to our school psychologists to the school counselors. And my kind of parting thought that I always think of is a statement from President John F. Kennedy. And he said something along the lines of, one person can make a difference and everyone should try. And I always think about that because there's so many people in our schools that can make that difference, and we all should try.
All children thriving is a part of equity, and that's thriving in all domains, being thrilled, being happy, and so forth. And as I pass it on to Rich, I want to say it's about the whole child. It's about the whole adult, and it's about supporting both, whether they're the adults at home, adults in the community, or adults in school. And with that, I pass it on to Rich Long.
Thank you, David, and the panelists. When David was telling me about his vision for this panel, I reflected to him in all of the exemplars that we talked to earlier this week, the leadership of the education community. When we talk about what the kids need, what the schools need, what the adults need, mental health it comes to the front of that conversation almost instantly. You also mentioned about the need for mental health professionals. To everybody out there, please keep in mind that there are hundreds of counties in the United States with no psychiatrist. There are hundreds of schools out there with no school counselor. There are hundreds of schools out there with no social worker or school psychologist there. It does require us to work intentionally together to break this cycle of destructiveness that this idea of discipline it has foisted on us. And part of Public Schools Week is about why teachers, administrators, and specialists take pride in their schools in what they do. It's because they want to make a difference. And part of making a difference is moving forward, just like Dr. Cantor said, it's not repairing kids, but preparing kids. This is a beautiful phrase. And it echoes also to what we heard in our exemplars, in our talking about polling data, why the public supports their public schools, their teachers, their administrators, and what they're looking for. The term came forward of joy. And here we talk about thriving and grace and patience. These are things we as adults build in ourselves and we need to be transmitting. Teachers, administrators, parents, all of us want this together. But as Carol Lee pointed out to us, this is a very complex environment. You here today touched on, the elements of the book of Descartes' error, thinking that the mind and the thought and the emotions were different. In talking about how this arc interrelates and how stress destroys the ability to think clearly, how Alma talking about teaching kids how to buy that 15 seconds where instead of just reacting, they stop for a moment and put a word on that feeling so that they then are able to change. Chris's idea about the program, he undersold that. That has been tried with and worked with over 1 million kids and 80,000 teachers for less than $10 or $15 per teacher. We have those tools out there. Go to the National Association of School Psychologists website, find out about how to work in this interrelationship. Go to the LFA website and publicschoolproud.org to find the resources that was mentioned. And in Pamela Cantor's working with children, her program there is based on this interrelationship of the environment to the demands of the society and to where we need to be going forward as a community that works in an environment that's even more demanding today because of the pandemic, that more people have come to realize that it is no longer just the 3 R's. We're also feeding the kids. We're feeding their families. We're trying to train them in how to work together and problem solve. Resiliency is not something that comes by chance. And just as these people have said, and others have said before them, it comes forward because of the professionals engaging collectively, because they do work together. Thank you, David, and the panel for excellent afternoon.